Alistair, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me, John Joe.
It's a real pleasure to have somebody with your background and the ilk of the elite level of golf, of which your career is well known, and we'll talk to it offline. Of course, I'll put a description in there. But US Open, Australian Open, PGA player over the course of a decade and beyond. Really excited to hear your story, not of only golf, but how you transitioned into the corporate world via tech sales more recently. Could you maybe talk us through your early beginnings and what that looked like in your journey to reach the heights of professional golf?
Yeah, sure. Well, I had my parents were both keen golfers, and it was really Dad that kind of drove my interest in the game. Not just myself, but he introduced a number of family and friends into the game associated with his network into line of business. But for me, it was Dad had made it fun. It wasn't so much a chore to go out and play with him, and he never pushed us to myself or my two sisters. Mum included. She didn't take up the game until she was in her 30s and after three kids. But it was that nice introduction, being able to enjoy it, a game with my dad, that got us into it. So I guess but he was at a private club. I wasn't able to play at that club until you were 14 years of age. I did go down and play the public courses occasionally during the school holidays. But it wasn't until I actually had an injury in my feet that I needed to stop running. I was always keen on the Australian rules football and the tennis, but that running motion needed to stop, and golf was obviously a good choice for me.
How old were you when you started playing golf?
So I joined Huntingdale Golf Club when I was 14 years old. But yeah, as I say, I played once or twice during school holidays. I played with Dad whenever possible, or maybe hit some balls, but nothing too. Didn't have a huge amount of time, to be fair, in between all the other activities that I was doing. So it was 14 that I got right into it, and it was a fairly steep learning curve at that stage.
Was that relatively late as golf careers go?
It certainly is. Well, not so much back then, but these days, I mean, you see the Tiger Woods that got into it when he was, I think, on TV at age 3. There are a number of other stories around the world. Even a close friend of ours, who has a nephew that is, I believe, the world champion at 6 years of age. I don't always recommend at 6 years of age you need to be that competitive and that good at the game, just so long as you're enjoying it.
Nice. So you began at 14, obviously started to realize you had a natural tenacity for it. There would have been a certain break in the road where it became more serious, I imagine, and your time spent on the course training probably started to become a lot more intensive than your peers. Can you remember when that was?
Yeah, it was almost about the time that I was turning 18. I had cars and 18th birthday parties came into my life. I did enjoy going out with my friends, but I didn't feel the need to continue on. I was always an early riser, and therefore heading home from the parties, driving to those parties, therefore not drinking, and waking up with the morning effects the day later. I was able to get up. I would end up playing 18 holes with some great fellas, and then I might even continue on and play a second 18. So it really got into my life that way. I ended up doing an air conditioning apprenticeship through that period, and I found that the weekends I was entering tournaments. I was competing against the VIS and AIS people, who were the boys and girls who were training full time all day, every day. I was working during the week, but I was still competitive against them. Might not have been winning the tournaments, but I was still running maybe top 5 or top 10 having worked a full week. So it was at that point that I thought, well, maybe I can after the apprenticeship I can actually devour more time to it and see if there's an outcome from that I could transition into the professional rankings.
And that discipline, when your friends were going out and doing what 18-year-olds do, was that because you wanted to be a pro and you realized that was part of the conditions to get there?
I probably didn't realize that. It was just something that I was keen to do. I was keen to compete the following day. I was keen to do as well as I can, and therefore it almost was just it wasn't out of direction that I needed to have to do that. But it was just, well, no, I think that this is what's going to give me that edge. And therefore, if I knew that you needed a full night's sleep, I needed that you needed to be fresh on the task, and otherwise you're wasting your time. So do it right, or don't bother doing it at all.
Would you say that approach has been inherent in your personality before picking up golf, or was it exclusive to golf?
No, I guess. I mean, golfers are all competitive, and good and bad golfers. We keep on coming back. It's an incredibly frustrating game, and whatever level that you're playing at. I think our competitiveness keeps us all coming back. We want to win the weekly comps. We want to get our names on the board. We want to get to the single figures, or just beat our competition. So ultimately, I think I had it before that when I was running cross country or playing tennis. It was to always try and do it as well as possible.
And it sounds like golf was a natural pursuit. You enjoyed all the hours that you're out there practicing. Was there a time in which you realized the time spent out there became more laborsome? I'm thinking, for instance, if you had to go work on a particular shot, you had to go and work on your putting, for instance, as opposed to just doing your regular 18 rounds, enjoying the game. Was there a real direction change there when things started to get serious at all?
No, not really. It was a game to me. I loved it. I always had some sort of a focus point that I wanted to work on and achieve those goals. I was it was kind of ingrained in me in an early age, probably through the VIS, that you needed to be well rounded in all of your game, not just beating balls off the tee or putting, but you needed the full scope. So and in time, your mindset, your physicality, ability all came into it. So it was really outlining what the requirements were that needed to get the most out of your game. So we all love going to the driving range and smashing drivers over the back fence, but ultimately you're never going to hit any more than 14 drivers over the game. So, but you are generally going to have call it 36 putts a game. So, how much time is going to be spent in the relevant areas, and going on from there, it does your short game. Letting you down, and you can analyze the games that you've been playing. You can see where your game is stronger or weaker. But then, how's your ability to stay healthy, get around the course, and when you start flying, that it all comes and starts to be a part of the outcome that you need.
What was your greatest achievement in the game?
I had a number of great moments. There was probably not as great as some of the my fellow golfers, but my first World Golf Championship at over in Florida, Doral, home of the Blue Monster, where my idol Greg Norman had won numerous times. I'd grown up watching him, and thought it was great being there. I'd met some of the greats of the game that week. It was my first PGA Tour event. And I was able to shoot a 64 in the last round to run fifth. So that gave me a sense of belonging there that week, that I could make it, that I could compete against, I guess, the big boys on tour. I qualified a couple of times for a US Open. I'd beaten future world number one Jordan Spieth to get into that into my first US Open at Olympic in California. I'd hit the leaderboard in the second round, just ahead of Tiger Woods. So that was a fun memory. Winning the Moona Classic in front of family and friends down on the Mornington Peninsula that I've spent a huge amount of time here in Victoria. And that got me my start over on the nationwide tour, the secondary tour over in America, but also shooting a 60, which is the lowest recorded score on the Australasian tour. Matches Paul Gow and Ernie Els, but probably, I guess, as I mentioned, it was Dad that had introduced me to the game. He'd encouraged us and to never push us, and it was actually Dad that had caddied for me to qualify for both the Australasian and the Asian tours. Unfortunately, he'd passed away the following week, and so never actually got to see me compete as a professional. But he was with me when I achieved that dream of turning professional, and having him by my side is probably the highlight, I could say.
Wow. And what separated you from all the other players that are Australian made, all the peers you played with over the years? What was the key ingredient, would you say, that led you to reach the elite level to be playing in a US Open?
Well, I think it was probably my work ethic. It was I don't think that I had as much talent as some golfers. Mark Leishman was my partner during the amateur days, and I think that the amount of talent that Mark has is amazing. He was able to hit shots that the majority of us very good players were unable to achieve. But I think it was my work ethic that and discipline that actually got me to where I needed to be. There was a number of other really good golfers, talented golfers that probably didn't have that that guidance, or they didn't want to follow the guidance from parental advice or through the VIS that had tried to educate us, but they decided that those 18th birthday parties and girls and cars were more fun and exciting. But I was so I'd have to say that they were, that was probably where I was able to stand up. So I mean, resilience was it's a game that you are going to lose far more than you're going to win, and so being able to understand that as well, that just because you don't win and don't take the trophy home, that you can still take something out of that and just become that 1% better for next week.
How did you find that you had resilience? Was it something you feel you were born with? Was it genetic, or was it environmental?
No, it grew on me. It was something that I certainly needed to work on, and I guess that competitiveness really made me want to win every single time I competed, and I was probably a little disappointed if I didn't. But over time, that resilience was what was required to control the emotions. And I mean, to understand that, I mean, you can even take it back to golf is not dissimilar to a game of chess, or even a game of life. It's not predictable, nor is life, nor is work. It's not scripted, and you've got to play the ball from where it lies. You need to take your next shot from the good spots and the bad. You can't change what has happened on the last shot or the last hole, and you can't predict what as good as you're feeling of what's going to come. You still can't predict on where the ball's going to go, if it's going to get a good bounce, a lucky bounce, or a bad break. So you've got to have that resilience and be prepared for the outcome of whatever's coming to you.
Your story is quite unique, and you mentioned the relationship with your father and how instrumental he was in your career. Most in oftentimes when you have a child protege or there's a parent-child relationship, it can be very easy for that parent to push the child right when they're noticeably very good at something. But it sounds like your father was able to not put pressure on you, even though it looked like you were going to reach the the heights of the game. Could you talk us through what impact that style had on you? What was his philosophy about you playing golf?
Well, I guess it was a game for us. It was a game he made it enjoyable. He didn't say that whatever the outcome that there's going to be consequences from it. He laughed at whatever it was that whether it be good or bad. And I mean, he was a fantastic golfer himself, and he possibly had the worst swing you've ever seen on a golf course, but he was able to manufacture getting the ball around and getting the ball in the hole. So for me that had been reading these textbooks and have a textbook swing type thing, to actually watch him be able to produce the scores that he did, and it was almost a bit frustrating to me and others. But for him, he just laughed it off, and he instilled within us that that it was a game that can be enjoyed by all. It doesn't matter if you're a professional competing against a novice. He included everyone. He made it fun. He didn't take it too seriously, and I guess that's why we kept on going and included family, friends, and whoever it might be to keep on going with it.
Sounds like he took the pressure off somewhat. And now moving on from golf, you transition into the corporate world, of course, working in tech sales. Now, many athletes go through that transition, and it's a difficult time. You can face identity crisis, particularly when you've been at the absolute elite levels, like you have. How was your transition from professional sport into the corporate world?
It took a bit of adjusting. Certainly did. I had been fortunate enough that my name was able to get me into positions that might not have been other times. And I was very lucky to have got into tech sales, and I was getting able to start selling into a position that my name had been able to get me indoors that might not have other times. And so that was a terrific advantage for me to still be out of a comfort zone selling tech that I wasn't familiar with, but still within an industry that I did know very well. So, but I guess those I was still competitive, and I still wanted to win the sale. My resilience still needed to come into it, because again, you're going to lose a lot more than you're going to win. But I was confident, and I believed in the product that I was selling, to actually get in there and tell a good story. So those, I guess they all transitioned into something that worked for me. It wasn't for everyone, and it was a great starting point. I'd moved on from there since, but it was a great starting point for me.
What were the hardest parts of the transition?
I guess the hardest parts were that understanding the tech side of it. There's definitely going to be conversations that were well over my head, and a lot of talk that I didn't necessarily understand. And it was a big learning curve in that space. It was, but I guess the work ethic and the discipline of sitting down and saying, rightio, we're going to one, learn how to sell, but also understand, writing everything, all the words down, and Googling them that you don't understand, so that tomorrow you can come back and be that 1% better. not everyone knows everything, and I think that if you're a little open to that and you're not trying to bluff anyone, then people are pretty find that almost find that well, in a good way, that they can kind of help you and educate you rather than being fooled. So yeah, the transparency was tough, but ultimately being in that in the right space for me, it certainly helped.
I found that when I left the game of football, though much earlier than you did, and not at the heights that you did, but from the professional game, I found it was very difficult when my family, friends, and people around me knew me as a footballer. I had a certain identity and, of course, some ego that came with that. And I found moving into the corporate world very difficult because you start from scratch. In your case, a little bit different because you're obviously well known and revered in Victoria anyway. But did you have any any difficulties in terms of your identity and being known as a former golfer, now salesperson? Has that ever come into your mindset at all?
It does, but it's also you take the good with the bad, and so I mean, it's an interesting topic, and even those that don't necessarily play the game were always keen to find out, I guess, what the approach was when playing and where I'd been and who I'd played with or the great sites that I'd seen, but and so therefore it's certainly a talking point that that was of interest. And so I guess and it's nice. It's always nice to be the center of attention, I guess, and being that story. But ultimately, that's what our customer is also seeking. They're also keen on finding out what their objectives are or challenges and consequences. So ultimately, it was just a role reversal. But in my mind, I'd left the game also because I was keen to spend more time with my family. So it was yes, I gave up that sporting identity, but my wife and I just had a little boy. And in return, I was able to spend more time with him. I wasn't going to be traveling the 35 weeks that needed to be away, and so therefore I was going to be able to take him to his swimming lessons and other, I guess, birthday parties that otherwise I would have been missing out on. So I can now enjoy that. I've taken I've enjoyed taking my two kids to their first day of school. I enjoy picking them up or taking them on a regular basis and coaching them in their sports that they do. So yeah, goods and bads. Certainly would love to be still out playing there with Leash and the friends that I'd grown up playing with. But ultimately, I think that I've made the right decision. It's been good for my family, and I'm happy with the outcome.
Fantastic. And you obviously, that job that you had, professional sport, was a passion, something you enjoyed, probably didn't feel like work. Is it a little bit of a different approach the way you think about your job now? And maybe a really important thing I'm trying to understand in people I talk to, do you need to find meaning from your job, or is it part of something bigger? Is that something you think about at all?
I probably don't, to be honest. I do enjoy talking to people and understanding their position and what helps them. Everyone has challenges, and if we can help overcome some of those challenges, then I think that's a good day. Ultimately, yes, I would love to be playing football, playing golf, playing something outside, but ultimately that's it's not something that everyone gets to do. I did it for a time, and it was fantastic when I did it. Highly recommend it to anyone that's going to give it a go. But ultimately, in the end, for me, I can now do a job that provides me a lifestyle to now move on with my life and spend that time with my family in such a way that it brings me a fair bit of joy too.
Over time, it sounds like that the answer to this might have changed, but how would you define elite And how is that different now to perhaps when you were earlier in your sporting career?
I think there's probably different levels of elite, and it can grow too. Elite, you might be elite at your club, you might be elite in your state, and so again, achieving that elite status, whatever level that you are at, is it might be good enough. But to me, there's always going to be something bigger and better, ultimately. So, I always was striving to be elite. I never really saw myself as elite, as there was always something bigger and better than I. So. I think it's just another one of those goals that you can tick off, and you can ultimately try to achieve. But like the game of golf, you can probably always reduce your handicap and improve.
Sure. And it sounds like perhaps your idea of elite now spans itself across to family life and being, you know, parent, and a dad and a husband, and you have more opportunity to take that view as opposed to being a professional sports person, where it can be pretty one-dimensional, right? To really serve at the top of the game, it can be difficult to incorporate other parts of life that you could become elite in or want to be elite in. Is that the approach that you now take, perhaps?
I mean, always trying to. I certainly don't see myself as elite, but it's almost probably trying to take my mum and dad's approach, and you're going to make mistakes. You're going to. Not everyone has the right answers, and whatever has happened for child one is obviously going to be different to child two, and it's my child's different to your child. So ultimately, it's really just taking those steps, seeing if they work, and trying to provide the best opportunity for the kids that we can. So it's just a learning process. I don't have the answers. I try to listen to any kind of podcast that might give a tidbit that I might be able to use. So it's no different to golf. The coach doesn't always have the right answers, but they might just have an answer that you might be able to use, whether it be today or in a year or two's time. So if you can just take in as much information as you can to store, then one day it might work out for you.
It sounds like curiosity is, you know, really been a key part of your development, and the fact that you've gone on to work harder than others and grow as a result of that personal learning, along with resilience and competitiveness. Are there any other assets you think have been really important in being successful in sales since you moved over from the professional sport?
Yeah, I mean, curiosities. I guess it's something that, and questions was something that my dad again gave to me. He did say that we're not going to play every week, and that I'm to put my name down with some random member. And that I've got to present well, and I don't want to be that person that just walks down the side of the fairway and doesn't speak. So he kind of gave me that task of being able to ask a handful of questions to that member who I didn't know. And I mean, that was as simple as who they are and who they barracked for, if they had family, and what they did for a job, whether or not they liked that job, and if they would do something differently. So ultimately, it in return, it then came to I was able to, if see them again, talk about how well the Tigers were doing, and or the share price of their company was doing, and really just started a conversation about them. So, I mean, that curiosity had kind of stemmed from them, just to be almost a bit more interesting whilst on the golf course. But I guess the competitiveness was always a major factor. The confidence, you got to believe in what you're doing. Need to be able to back yourself and take the right calculated risks. I mean, any kind of sport, I think, needs a bit of patience. You yourself would know that as soon as you try to force something, as soon as you try to kick the ball harder, hit the ball harder, the quicker it's going to bite you, and that's not the way the game is played. And so I don't think it's any different to work. As soon as you try to force a sale, that the customers all of a sudden going to be, well, what's happening here and why have we sped it up? So you need to be adaptable. As I said before, the golf and life, it's not predictable, and you need to be able to take the good with the bad and work it out from that position. So there's been a number of things that I've been able to take on, but there's some of them.
Fantastic. Seems like there's a lot of crossover from elite sport into the elite level of sales. What are your plans or your goals in the tech sales world? If you are thinking about the next 5-10 years, what would you like to achieve?
I'm pretty happy with sticking with the tech sales. I enjoy it. I enjoy getting out there and meeting new people and understanding their positioning and what kind of what are their kind of goals and how we can try and work together to assist them. So ultimately, that's I'm enjoying that. It provides that lifestyle that for me is pretty comfortable with where I'm at, but I've still got a lot of learning to do. I've still got I'm still keen to do that. So and to become a better person in this game that I play now.
Fantastic. And finally, we've talked through a lot of those skills and habits that have been really influential for you that have come from professional sports. So resilience, competitiveness, dedication, patience, perhaps there have been a curiosity, have been perhaps the 5 key ones we've talked to. You've been in tech sales for some time now, and you probably got some exposure to more junior reps and people on the way up. Is there anything you've taken from your years in professional sport and your years now in tech sales that you think junior people might need to know or could do better? Are there any things that, any advice that you give to somebody starting out in the industry that you think could really propel them to the next step?
I think I certainly think that finding that mentor, latching on to someone that's willing to give you time. I mean, it might just be for a coffee, and they might be able to take you along to their next appointment, and understanding that it's not just question after question that you need to hit your customer with. During COVID, I wasn't so much of a fan of it, because really you logged on to a Zoom call and you just started firing the questions away. You didn't build a rapport. You didn't find out about the person, how their weekend was, and they're a little bit more about them and not so much just work. So I think finding that mentor who can provide you a little bit more guidance and what's worked for them, what hasn't, is absolutely key and something that almost is a must-have.
Fantastic. Alistair, you've been really generous with your time. Real pleasure to get somebody at the very top, the elite level of the game, to share your experiences in golf, but also tech sales. So thank you very much. I know there'll be a lot of listeners who already know who you are, but if they want to check you out and learn more about yourself and what you're up to, what's the best way they might get in touch? Would it be checking out your LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn is always a good way. My details are on there. But yeah, more than happy to share the experience.
Fantastic. Alistair, thanks again.
John Joe, been a treat. Thanks, mate. Bye.